Good day, everyone. Welcome to Liberation Prayer Ministry. And I also want to welcome us to the April edition of our monthly Empowerment Summit. My name is Olajimoke Aboduri, and I count it a privilege and an honor to be your host today, and also to be hosting this with my friend and my sister of over 10 years, Lolade Ogwagu. And um, it's been a pleasure being a friend to her, and also I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and why we are here. Over to you, Lolade.
Thank you so much, Rumi. So yes, my name is Lolade Obuagu. I am an immigration attorney here in the United States. I'm a dual licensed attorney. I am licensed in Nigeria and here as well. I am admitted into the Federal District Court, the Eastern District of New York. I am admitted into the New York State Bar and to the immigration courts as well. And I represent clients in all 50 states in the United States. And also, if you are abroad as well, we'll be happy to speak with you and see how best we can assist you with whatever immigration inquiry that you have. I have my bachelor's from the University of Lagos in English. I proceeded to the University of Leeds in the United Kingdom, where I obtained my bachelor's of laws, my LLB, and then had my master's degree in the University of Aberdeen in the United Kingdom as well. And then I got married. I eventually moved to the United States, where I was qualified to practice law as well. Um, Over to you. That's
Thank you so much for the introduction. Okay, so before we go deep into why we are here, I want to give a little bit of a context. Why Liberation Prayer Ministry has brought this to this platform, and why information is important, especially when it comes to immigration, because immigration is like the basics of everyone in the US. Like if you're moving from one country to another to the US, then immigration, you have to have it sorted out. So over time, we've noticed that the immigration system in the US is very complex, and the information, most people do not have information to be able to navigate the very complex system. So information, which we all know that information is key in everything we do in life. So that's like one of the main reasons why we're putting this together, and we've brought a an immigration attorney. Lola Day is someone that has or been in the immigration system for a while, and she has seen it all. She has seen how people can make mistakes because of lack of information, and we've all seen it. I'm sure so many people know situations like this. So Lolade would be she has a presentation for us today. She would go deep into that presentation and how we can all navigate the very complex immigration system that we find ourselves in. Over to you, Lolade.
Yes, thank you, Joby. So you mentioned something about the immigration system being very complex. Yes, in fact, it is a very complex system. It's a system that is in constant flux. Immigration in the United States is not in silo. It's not in a silo. It is affected by the global affairs in the world. So what goes on in different countries will affect the immigration system here in the United States. So what obtained 10 years ago will no longer obtain today. Things change. What happens, like, for instance, with the war going on in Russia and Ukraine, has now made the nationals of Ukraine have the opportunity to actually come into the United States, on a special category. So, things, even what happened in Afghanistan, has made nationals from Afghanistan have another category to come into the United States. What happens in Haiti, what happens, in Venezuela will affect the immigration policies here in the United States. And I guess that is the reason why it's often very challenging for people, because they constantly have to keep abreast with the new laws, with the new policies, and with the changes. And in order to actually live and work in the United States without any restriction, there's something that is so important and so crucial, and that is what I'll be talking to us about today, which is the permanent resident card. otherwise known as the green card. And today my presentation will be based on the green card, just talking to us about how we can get this green card and what it entails. And I'll also be talking about some of the pitfalls that I find that over time people fall into. A lot of times it's due to ignorance, like Jumi had mentioned. It's due to lack of information. Sometimes it's actually intentional, and I will speak on that as well. But it's so important to have information, because information really is everything. um, I'm an immigrant myself. I have navigated this path. So it's something I'm passionate about. It's something that I hold dear to my heart. And as much as possible, I'd like to share as much knowledge and information that I have with as many people that need it, so that they could avoid the mistakes that others have made, and have a straighter path towards eventually becoming a citizen of the United States. So I'll start. I've already spoken about, the policies in the United States. It shifted from an opened up policy when the first settlers came to the United States to a variety of immigration restrictions, which we all see with the policies that we encounter in our immigration journey. And like I say, it is largely impacted by the global affairs of the world. So you hear this very this two word phrase, immigration status. So what really is your immigration status? It's just basically referring to your legal authorization to reside, to work, and to study in a country other than your country of citizenship. Here in the United States, your status determines whether you're authorized to stay in the United States at all, for how long you can stay here, and what activities you're permitted to engage in. So your status might restrict you from working at all. Your status might also restrict you from working beyond a certain number of hours. Your status might permit you to study, and your status might restrict you from studying. So, that is basically what your status is. It determines whether you're authorized to stay in the country, and for how long, and what activities you're permitted to engage in. And there are a variety of immigration statuses here in the United States. You have the non-immigrant status, and that is a temporary status. What that does is that it allows an individual come here for a specific period of time. And you find the B1, B2 visa category that falls under the non-immigrant status. So you're here as a visitor, you're here to, for tourism, you're here for business, that's even the F1 status, you're here to study, you're non-immigrant, that's your status. You have the immigrant status. That is a permanent status that allows an individual to live and work in the United States indefinitely. And that is what most people would aspire for, because that is what will permit you to eventually naturalize and live here as a United States citizen. You also have another status, which is the undocumented status. And that refers to individuals who do not have any legal authorization to reside in the United States. Um, if you're undocumented, perhaps you have come into the country either illegally, you crossed the border without being inspected or paroled, or you did come into the country legally, you were admitted into the country, but you have overstayed your visa, or perhaps you violated the terms of your immigration status. I'll give an example of that. If you're here on an F1 status, that means you're a student here, you're restricted to work only a certain number of hours. If you go beyond those number of hours, you have violated the terms of your immigration status, and you run the risk of being, losing your F1 status, being sent out of the university, and even being sent out of the country. So it's very important to understand what your status is and what the terms of the status, permits you to do and not to do. You also have another category called the asylum status, and that's a form of protection for individuals who have fled their home country due to fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. And this is also similar to the refugee status. It's just that the refugees are outside of the United States, while the asylum seekers are within the United States. But they're very similar. So the refugee status is another protection for individuals, who have also fled their country, but they're applying from outside the United States. So very similar category. So these are the different statuses that you have, in the United States. Now, there's so many bodies, and there's a reason why I'm going to speak about the immigration regulatory bodies and agencies. There's so many bodies that regulate immigration in the United States, and I'll speak briefly on each of them, and you will understand as this talk proceeds and progresses why I had to speak about these bodies. So you have the DHS, which is the Department of Homeland Security. This agency is responsible for enforcing immigration laws and processing immigration applications. So if you're abroad and you want to apply for a visa into the United States, this is the body that you'll most times be interacting with. You have the USCIS, which is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. This agency is also part of the DHS, and they're responsible for processing immigration applications and petitions within the United States. So if you're applying for your green card, you're submitting your application for asylum within the United States, this is the body you'll most times be interacting with. You have the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Now, this agency is also part of the DHS. So DHS is kind of like an umbrella body that has different agencies that are responsible for different things. So you have the U.S., we call it the CBP, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They're responsible for securing the U.S. borders, processing individuals entering and exiting the country. We know that the United States shares border with Canada, also shares with Mexico. So the agents that you find at the border most times are part of the CBP, the Customs and Border Protection. You also have ICE, which is a very popular agency, which a lot of people interact with here in the United States. They are the police of the immigration system. And this agency is responsible for investigating and enforcing immigration laws in the United States. So when a person falls out of status and they get wind of it, then they're the ones coming after you because you have broken the laws of the United States, just the way the police will come after you if you break the laws of whatever town, city that you're in, or the federal law of the United States. You also have the Department of State. Similar to DHS, they're also responsible for issuing visas to individuals seeking to enter the United States. Another body which people would encounter, especially within the United States, is the Executive Office for Immigration Review. Now, this is the Department of Justice. This agency is part of the Department of Justice, and they call them the judicial branch of the immigration system. They're responsible for adjudicating immigration cases, including deportation proceedings. So if a person applies for an immigration benefit, say you apply for a green card, you're denied. If you apply for asylum and you're denied, if you apply for whatever immigration benefit you apply for and you're denied, and you have to appeal this is the body that you'll be interacting with. Okay. So this question, do I need a green card? Yes. If you want to live without restrictions here in the United States, if you want to work without restrictions here in the United States, yes, you do need the green card. It's known as the permanent resident card. And this is the official document, a little card with so much power, but it's the official document that allows foreign nationals to live and work in the United States indefinitely. And it really is the first step to becoming a United States citizen. Now, there are exceptions. There are some people that really do not need the green card. You'd be surprised. But yes, there are those people, the category of people, and their children who are born to United States citizen parents. They really don't need a green card. If their parent is a citizen, it doesn't matter where in the world they're born, they automatically can become citizens once their parents file the requisite papers. Then there are certain members of the US military that really do not need a green card as well. And there are certain individuals who have served in designated military conflicts who are spouses or children of US citizens. They also do not need a green card. So not everybody needs a green card, but majority of people will need a green card with the exception that I have mentioned. So how can I get a green card? There are different avenues of getting a green card. And immigration is so wide. It's so I'll be limiting our discussion today to one of the areas, which is the family-based sponsorship. But how can I get a green card? You can get a green card based on the family-based sponsorship. You can also get a green card based on employment-based sponsorship. You can get a green card via the diversity visa program. And I'll speak about that as well. And you can get a green card based on refugee or asylum status. And there are other programs that would allow people get green cards. So I'll talk about the family-based sponsorship. If you have a relative who is a US citizen or green card holder, they may be able to sponsor you for a green card. If you have a mother, if you have parents, if you have children above the age of 21, if you have siblings, they can sponsor you for a green card. The employment based sponsorship needs you to have a job offer from a US employer, and then they'll be able to sponsor you for a green card. The diversity visa program is like the lottery system that the US government holds in different parts of the world, and it allows individuals with low rates of immigration to come to the United States. But the thing with the diversity visa program is when the United States realizes that the rate of immigration from that country has reached a certain limit, then that country no longer qualifies for the diversity visa program, and it ends. It ended, I'm Nigerian, and it ended in Nigeria some years back. So when they realized that there's now a better rate of immigration to the US, then it ends. But there's still a lot of countries that still conduct the diversity visa program. So the refugee and asylum status as well is another path to securing a green card. Like I discussed earlier, if you're fleeing persecution from your or violence from your home country, you may be able to apply for asylum. And once you're granted asylum status, within a year, you can apply for your green card. And the other programs I spoke about, you have the Immigrant Investor Program. So it allows you come into the United States and invest your resources, your funds in the US economy, and then the government will in turn grant you a green card. Okay. And I'll be happy to take questions as I'm taking the presentation. So if you have questions, please feel free to send in your questions. Okay, so so I spoke about the family-based sponsorship, and there's something important that we need to understand about this category. There is a limited number of green cards each year for the family-based immigration. So, and the availability of the green card really varies depending on the type of relationship between the sponsor and the beneficiary. I've said sponsor a couple of times, so I'll explain what I mean by sponsor. The sponsor is the US citizen or the green card holder that is applying for the immigration benefit for the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the person who is receiving the immigration benefit. So the sponsor or the green card holder will petition the US government and say, I have this relative that I would like for to receive this immigration benefit. And the beneficiary is that person who is receiving the benefit. Okay. So in order to qualify under the family-based sponsorship, you have to be a relative of a US citizen. Now, there are two main categories. One, you can be an immediate relative of a US citizen. And under the immediate relative category, you have spouses, you have unmarried children under the age of 21, and you have parents of US citizens who are over the age of 21. Now, for this group, this category, there's no limit to the number of green cards that can be issued, right? Now, the second category is the family preference category. And under this category, you have unmarried sons and daughters of US citizens, you have spouses and unmarried sons and daughters of green card holders, and you have the married sons and daughters of US citizens. If you notice, in the first category, I talked about children. And this category, we're talking in the immediate relative category, I talked about children. In the family preference category, I'm talking about sons and daughters. The US immigration system differentiates sons and daughters from children because sons and daughters are children above the age of 21 or children who are married. So if you're married or above the age of 21, you will no longer fall under the immediate relative category. You would fall under the family preference category. And in this category, there's an annual limit to the number of green cards that can be issued each year. Okay. And I'll talk about the steps to the green card, securing a green card. First, and it's two steps. First, you have to file the green card petition. And then, and that is done by the petitioner or the sponsor, like I discussed. You submit your application to the USCIS. If you're filing for a green card for your family, immediate relative, or someone in the preference category, a relative from the preference category, you'll be sending an I-130. If you are an employer who is filing for an employee, you'll be filing the I-140. And then you have to wait to obtain the approval of that petition. Once the petition is granted, then you move on to the second stage of the green card process, wherein the beneficiary will now, if you're in the United States, you would adjust your status. So if you're, depending on what your status is, you'll then adjust your status using the form I-485. And then if you're outside of the United States, you'll be filing a consular application, and that's with the Department of Homeland Security. That's if you're outside the United States. Now, I talked about adjusting status, and I said in caps that only certain people can adjust status. And I'll explain that real quick. If you come into the United States and you're admitted, inspected, and paroled, you can adjust status. So if you come in with a visa and you're admitted into the United States, and then you get married, you fall in love, you get married, your spouse files for a green card application for you, you can adjust your status. If you're out of status, but you came in legally, so you came in and you were given a 6-month duration, but you stayed longer, for whatever reason you stayed longer, and you got married to your US citizen spouse, you can adjust your status within the United States without leaving the country. However, if you cross the border, you walk, say, from Mexico or from one of the neighboring countries or from Canada. I don't see a lot of immigration from Canada to the United States. It's more of from the United States to Canada. But there is that border. So if you come in to the United States from one of the borders and you're undocumented, then you can, in most cases, you cannot adjust status. Even if you get married to a US citizen or green card holder and your spouse files the petition for you, most times you'll be required to leave the country back to your home country and apply from your home country. In some cases, where you can prove exceptional hardship, you'll be allowed, but it's very discretionary, and it's only a very small percentage of people that are allowed to adjust status when they did not come into the country with when they were not lawfully admitted into the country. So that's also something to bear in mind. And there are other circumstances where people are not allowed to adjust status. If you commit certain types of crimes, there's certain situations where you will not be allowed to adjust status. So it's something to be very mindful of. Your immigration status is something that you should guard very jealously so that you don't jeopardize your chances of moving through the immigration system to eventually becoming a United States citizen. So in a green card application, and this is where I find that a lot of people struggle, with their supporting documents. And one thing I say is make sure that your documents are complete, organized, and detailed. And I'll talk about these three things. Complete. If you're asked for 5 documents, please provide all 5 documents requested. If for whatever reason you cannot provide all 5 documents, make sure that there's a substitute document for the document that you're providing. And I hesitate and I pause at this point because I'm supposed to have given my disclaimer, but I'll give it nonetheless. Um, I'm an immigration attorney, but I'm not your attorney. I will be your attorney when you have signed a retainer with me and paid me my legal fees. So as of today, I'm giving very general advice. This is not legal advice. So please do not rely on this advice as legal advice. Okay? So make sure that your application is complete, organized, and detailed. If you're asked to provide 5 documents, please provide all 5 documents. If one document is not available, say you don't have from my country and a lot of, developing countries and African countries, we struggle with documentation. It's something I've observed. We struggle with documentation. We struggle with record keeping. We struggle with knowing certain things about ourselves that you're expected to know in the United States. So it's so important to make sure that if you're not sure, seek legal advice. So if, for instance, you don't have a birth certificate, a lot of people in my country do not have birth certificates. Try and get a sworn declaration or an affidavit of your age. Try and get something to show you. Don't just ignore that request. If you're asked for 5 documents, provide all 5 documents. Because the last administration had a policy in place wherein the examining officers can make their decision based on what information they have before them. Prior to that, they would, they're required to reach out to the applicant and send you an RFE, which is called a request for further evidence, saying, oh, this document is missing. Can you provide this document? But with the new policy that came in, they really don't have to do that anymore. They are at liberty to make a decision based on what they have before them. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. About submitting like complete documents, I agree with you. But in a situation where someone has to file a petition or submit some documents or just file an immigration status change, but they are running out, they have a timeline and they are running out of time and they don't have all those documents put together. Is there a way to maneuver that situation?
Yes, yes. In most cases, there is a way, and that's with the online portal. So, and not all immigration benefits has that provision, but there are some that do have that provision. So, where you have the ability to file online, you can go back and add more documents to what you have submitted. And as much as possible, don't delay. So if you once you've put in the paper, maybe because you're running out of time, you put it in. It's not, it's not ideal, but I understand there'll be cases where you're working with a timeline. You put it in. You can always submit additional documents. If it's an online portal, makes it easier. If it's not an online portal, you can still send it in, and hopefully they're able to merge it. Another thing to note is that this is a very big government agency we're working with. You're working with civil servants who are working with thousands of applications from different parts of the United States and outside of the United States. There's so many applications they're working with. When the USCIS gets an application for a green card, for instance, and the beneficiary is abroad, the petition is decided here in the United States, it's granted. It is sent to the National Visa Center, and the person who is there will have to liaise with the Department of State to apply for the immigrant visa that will bring them in. So even the DOS is not just dealing with applications from that country, they're dealing with referrals from the USCIS to them. So we need to bear in mind that this is a government agency that is dealing with so many documents, so many documentations. So you have to make sure that you make their work as simple as possible for them. Don't make it complex. When you make it complex, you make their decision easy because it's complex. They won't they have they probably have a KPI to meet up with. So they just want to, go over cases. So if you make it complex, you do yourself a disservice. I hope I answered.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Thank you.
So as I go on with the presentation, please stop at any time to, ask whatever questions. I just want to ensure that people, because this area of the supporting documents is so crucial,
Mhm.
and then I also talk about being organized. Like I say, the officials are dealing with the examining officers are dealing with so many applications. And when you're submitting your applications, they tell you, I don't know how many people know this, not to staple documents. You don't staple documents. Use a paper clip to hold it together. Use a rubber band to hold it together. They're doing that to make their lives easier because they're going to be scanning these documents. They're going to be working with these documents. How easy is it if they're going to start on clipping paper clips? So make sure that you don't clip it with any with any staplers or staple pins. Just use paper clips, put them together, organize them in a manner that will make it easy for them to go over. If you're submitting a storyline or a cover letter with your application, make sure that your evidence is attached in a chronological manner, in
Mhm.
a topical manner, in a manner that flows, so that whoever is reading it can understand it. Instead of looking for one information in this section and looking down here, you throw them off, you confuse them. So it's so important to ensure that our supporting documents are complete, they are organized,
Mhm.
detailed. Please make sure that you provide enough information to support whatever it is you're asking for. If you're applying for VAWA application, I didn't talk about VAWA today because that is a whole different topic. But since I introduced it, VAWA is called the Violence Against Women Act. It is not limited to only women. It protects children, parents, and anyone who is married or related to a US citizen who has filed for them or who is living with them. For instance, a woman is married to a US citizen husband and she's facing violence and abuse from her husband. She can apply by herself a self petition under that VAWA provision. So that is what VAWA is, but that's not what we'll be talking about today. So if you're applying for a VAWA application, provide enough information about your application. So we understand that VAWA is basically for people who are facing abuse, people who are facing, you know, um, you know, um, 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 abuse from their spouse. You need to show evidence of the abuse. You can't just submit an application without the evidence of the abuse. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, we have a question here, and I'm just going to try my possible best to summarize it and hope I'm able to convey the question well. Someone is asking that can I don't know if it's a man or a woman, can someone who came into the United States on I don't know if they came in on like a spousal visa or something, but they are married to a US citizen, and maybe while before they before they're able to put in the application for green card, they applied for asylum. Then they also faced abuse with the US citizen. Now they have an application for asylum. They so it's this all goes back to, can we have multiple application with the USCIS? Because now it sounds like we have an application for asylum and also an application for VAWA.
Yes.
So how does that work?
Okay, thank you for that question. So multiple applications are permitted, but one thing you have to be mindful of is that the information must not be conflicting. So as long as the information you have provided is not conflicting, then multiple applications are permitted. One will stop for the other eventually because it's all the same body that is processing it. But you just need to make sure that information is not conflicting.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right. So talking about the supporting documents, and I was talking about VAWA, make sure that you provide sufficient information that will show and evidence the immigration benefit you're seeking. And I say this, that provide enough information without oversharing. And it's so important not to overshare, but to give exactly what you're asked. What do I mean by oversharing? Some people will struggle. And if you are struggling with whether you're oversharing or not, seek legal advice. That's what I would just say. Seek legal advice. If you're asked for the last 5 years of your educational history, please, we're in April 2023. So you're going to give 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023 only. They didn't ask you for 2018. They didn't ask you for 2016 or 2015. You give exactly the 5 years they have asked you for. If they
Okay.
ask you for your address history for the last 5 years, and we're in April 2023, you start from April 2020, 2019, and you give exactly that. And
Okay.
that is so important. And people, like I said, people struggle. What type of information should I share? Now, some people would say, I have a criminal conviction in another country. You know, it's not the US. They might never know. Can I withhold this information? Some people have come into the United States on one passport, then they were deported, and they're now here in another name, and they're now here on their own passport. Should I disclose this? Is this something I should share? Is this something, do they have to know? I mean, we're different, that's different names. My answer to that is, as much as possible, be honest. The United States immigration system is very sophisticated now, even with artificial intelligence, with the social media, it's very sophisticated. You don't want to be caught up in a lie. Even sometimes withholding information will be classed as fraudulent or willful misrepresentation. And I will talk about that. So, why I say be honest is because one of the provisions of the Immigration and Nationality Act is that any alien who by fraud or willfully representing a material fact and seeks to procure or has sought to procure or has procured a visa, other documentation or admission to the United States or other benefits provided under this chapter can be deemed inadmissible. Inadmissible means that you can be refused from receiving that immigration benefit and, if possible, denied ever becoming a United States citizen. So it's so important that we do not withhold information that we should share, and we try to be as honest as possible, because the consequences for making such misrepresentation can lead to, a 3-year bar, a 10-year bar, or even a lifetime bar.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question here. It says, how do I address a situation whereby I have given an incorrect information to the USCIS previously?
Okay, so this question is very wide. So I would say it depends on so many factors. Um, if you're making a second application and you have to come out clean, it's important to come out clean at that point. If your application is already in and you need to come out clean, whatever opportunity you have to come out clean, it's important to come out clean, because there are consequences if you're caught in the lie. But that is a very open ended question. So it will really depend on what the person's circumstances. And there are some times that you will need to seek legal advice on how to express what it is you're expressing. And the attorney would guide you on the best way, because you don't want to be seen as having lied in the past, because if you did lie in the past, that makes you a candidate for inadmissibility. So it's important to seek legal advice. If you have given information that is incorrect to the USCIS,
Mhm.
seek legal advice.
Okay.
Seek legal advice.
Um, I will that sick legal advice. It's a very great advice to anyone, and that's the first thing I tell anybody that comes to me about immigration. I say seek legal advice, and attorney will be the first person, I mean, best person to help you understand this. That being said, I've had situations where people get into, I mean, reach out to attorneys, and it's almost like they are being scammed. So,
Mm.
how do you identify an appropriate attorney? What are like the red flags people should watch out for before signing up with someone to represent you with the USIS?
So I find that a lot of people call themselves immigration consultants, and some will pose as attorneys when in fact they are not attorneys.
Yes.
They have no duty of care. There's no regulation guiding them and you, protecting your relationship with them. And as much as possible, you want to work with somebody who is an immigration attorney, licensed. That way, you know that you're protected. The law protects you, protects your relationship with that person. Because I know I've encountered so many people who have faced, it's unbelievable. People that pass themselves off as attorneys. It's a simple question: are you an attorney? Are you an immigration attorney? It's a simple question. And if they tell you what are your qualifications, it's not something that is difficult to find. But sometimes we don't ask those questions. They just tell you I'm an immigration consultant. What is a consultant?
Mm.
They all know they have nothing holding them to the standard that they should of the standard delivery that they should give to you. So if they run off with your money, what do you say? I gave it to an immigration consultant. He was supposed to file my application. So it's important you ask questions. I know that I'm from a culture where we don't ask so many questions. We just
Mm.
take what is given. But you can't do that in the United States. You have to ask questions. You have to ask questions.
I have like a follow up on that. So you're right. In United States, ignorance is not an excuse.
It's not anywhere in the world.
No, especially in United States, it is not an excuse. That being said, there are situations where I know immigration attorneys are often overwhelmed with so many cases, and sometimes it slips through their fingers. I've had situations where people uh, have like a time frame to file for, take for instance, asylum. So if you want to file for an asylum in the United States, there is a time frame where you can file for that.
Yeah.
And they give it to the immigration attorney, and the attorney, one way or the other, allow the time to pass. And now the person is in limbo. So is there a way to hold that attorney responsible, I mean, hold them uh, for the actions, and maybe there would be like an explanation to immigration and say, okay, so I gave, is there a way to maneuver that situation?
Yes, that does happen. Immigration attorneys a lot of times are working with, just like the USCIS officials, they're working with so many applications. One application will need almost a whole ream of paper, because I file such applications. You'll need almost a whole ream of paper, and that is just for one client's application. And you have maybe 10 clients per time. So it is quite overwhelming. But what I would say to people is, because it is such a sensitive thing, you need to take responsibility. It is either you are on the attorney's neck calling every day. If you know the attorney's office, show up. If you have the attorney's phone number, you're calling. You have their email, you're sending emails, so that in the event that anything goes wrong, you have a trail to show that, look, I was. However, please take responsibility. Because for asylum in particular, you have just 1 year within the time you arrived in the United States to file your I-589. So, and they're a stickler when it comes to that 1 year time. There are instances where they would allow you, permit you to file after 1 year. But like I say, and like most attorneys will tell you, it all depends. So it
Mm-hmm.
depends on your individual case. And that being said, you and a lot of people do this, what happened in one person's case becomes the stand, even though that was an exception, becomes the standard, and it becomes the yardstick where you're using to deal with your own situation.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has a justifiable reason for not filing within 1 year, filing for asylum within 1 year may not be your situation. So please don't let that 1 year pass. If you're filing for asylum, make sure you put the paper in. And asylum is one category where, because of the sensitivity, you're fleeing from persecution. They understand that you don't have all the paperwork. You weren't traveling with all your documentation. If you were, then that means you actually want, it's kind of like is this what it is or is this not what it is? So they understand that you came into the country because you were fleeing from persecution. So you did not have the paperwork. So that is one category where a lot of people file the forms without supporting documents. And the USCIS understands that, and then supporting documents can follow afterwards. So that timeline is so important. So there's really no excuse for missing that asylum timeline. Asylum timeline, stick to it. If you need to file within 1 year, send it, unless there's, extenuating circumstances like illness or whatever that can be proved. But like I say, it all depends on the individual case.
Okay. We have a question on the screen. It says, "What do I do after receiving an intent of denial letter?"
You have to read the letter.
Mm-hmm.
You get the letter, read the letter. What does the letter say? It's usually a notice of intent to deny. It's not a denial, but they're telling you we're one step away from denying you. And they will generally give you instructions on what to do. They generally tell you what they want you to do. Follow the instruction. And if in doubt, seek legal advice.
Yeah.
A lot of people receive this intent of denial letter. One, they interpret it as a denial letter.
I'm not doing
A
it.
lot of, yes, that's why I said read the letter. Some people interpret it as a denial letter. Some
Mm.
people ignore the letter. Some people miss the timelines that are given in the letter. So when you get a letter, read the letter. And when in doubt, seek legal advice.
Legal advice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because we are running out of time, we would allow you to like complete the presentation. If we still have time, then we'll take more questions. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I talked about willful representation and how it can lead to a bar, and make you inadmissible. You know, it's important. Be as honest as you can be, because false representation of a material fact, knowing that it is false, and your intention is to deceive the other party, is exactly what they call false representation of a material fact. When you're in doubt and you're thinking, this information, do I need to share this information? Do they need to know? Ask yourself these questions. Am I trying to apply for an immigration benefit? Am I trying to apply for a visa? Am I speaking to the CBP? Am I talking to ICE? Am I speaking to the Department of State? By speaking to them, you're talking to their agents, right? Am I, for instance, in Nigeria submitting a visa application for my B1, B2 visa? Am I here in the United States applying for my adjustment of status? Am I at the borders speaking to the CBP trying to come in to the United States? All these, that's why I spoke about these bodies before, because all these bodies are agents, and their staff are agencies, and these are the people that you will interact with, and these are the people that, and your interaction with these people will determine whether you're, giving a false representation, whether you're being dishonest, whether you're holding back information, or whatever the case may be. So if you are looking for an immigration benefit, ask yourself, tell yourself, rather, I need to be honest. Also ask yourself, is this true or is this a lie? I had a conviction and they're asking you about your past convictions
Hmm.
and you put nil, zero. Ask yourself, is this true or is it a lie? You know, the issue of whether it is material is something that the USCIS will interpret. So it's not for you to determine this is not material. No, it is their own interpretation of what is material. So as much as possible, I tell people, try and be as honest, give the information that is asked to you. Because if the representation is made to a US government official and all those bodies are government officials, then you could possibly fall under this category of having willfully or fraudulently withheld information. Now, and there are different instances of it. Some people fail to disclose the existence of a relative. It can be as minor as that. You fail to disclose that, oh, I have a relative living, a mother living in the United States, or that you lie that you're not married when in fact you're married, or you lie that you're married when in fact you're not married, or you have come to the United States before, but you say in your application, I've never been to the United States. Or, like I say, you have been convicted in a certain remote part of the world and you do not disclose that conviction. All these are in those are in situations where you have withheld information and you can be deemed as ineligible for a visa. Okay. And I find that some people have this conception, some people would claim to be married to secure an immigration benefit, maybe just a visa in Nigeria. You say, oh, you're married because you want to be seen as responsible. You don't have to be married to be responsible. There are other ways of proving responsibility. Do you have a business you are running alongside your full-time 9 to 5? Is there some charity organization that you're affiliated with? There's so many ways of proving responsibility without using something like this, being married when in fact you're not married. So it's important that, when in doubt, just seek in legal advice so you don't get yourself in trouble. And I've just talked about, the different instances where you can, you know, have the interaction with the government officials. You can be adjusting your status. You can be waiving a 2-year foreign residency requirement. It depends, it varies, But all hope is not lost. There's something called the waivers. You know, there's sometimes when a person is deemed as being inadmissible, but then you can file, there are two types of waivers. You can file the I-601 waiver or you can file the 212 waiver, the I-212 waiver. And depending on your circumstance, those waivers would allow you become admissible if they are approved and granted. Okay, so all hope is not lost. If you have misrepresented any information, either willfully or fraudulently, it is possible to rectify that by filing a waiver. But always seek legal advice, okay, so that you know which waiver applies to you and which waiver does not apply to you. And if you can even use the waivers, because not everyone can use the waivers. Okay. So that is all I have about for today. Immigration, like I say, is very wide, it's complex, it's ever in flux, so it changes over time. So if you have questions, you're unsure about applications, please seek legal advice. And like I said in the middle of our talk, I'm not giving any legal advice. I'm not your attorney. I am just speaking today. I'm giving as much information as I can. Please do not rely on this information as legal advice. If you want to contact me, if you have any questions, immigration inquiry, I put my contact up there. Give us a call and we'll be more than happy to see how best we can assist you. So if there are any other questions, I'll be more than happy to address them.
Yes, we have one right on the screen. What are the potential outcomes of my asylum case and how long does the process take?
Oh, wow. So I spoke very briefly about asylum because it's a whole it's a whole creature on its own. Asylum, you have to file within 1 year of being in the country. Within 1 year of being in the country, and I'll just pass this over to you real quick.
Okay. Okay. So some uncle are around. Uh, okay, so there is another question. I'm gonna keep talking. Hopefully, Uncle Ethan would allow us to get back to yes, our call. So there is another question I have. Um, this is about what people. I mean, how people live. Okay, so people come into the United States, and one way or the other, maybe they filed for asylum, or their spouse is has applied for how they're going to change their status. And while they are doing that, they get their work authorization, so they are able to file their taxes. They're able to do so many legal things in the United States. While they are doing that, there is one loophole, or one pit that most immigrants fall into, especially regarding taxes. And we all think IRS and immigration don't communicate. Do you understand? So I would love you to kind of give us advice regarding taxes, what you've experienced over time. Maybe you've had people have issues regarding their immigration because of the way they file their taxes, or the way they portray themselves in their taxes and things like that. If you have like a scenario or something, like advice, we would like to get that.
All right. Thank you so much. My apologies.
Okay.
I wear many hats. I'm a mom,
Yes, please
an
allow
attorney.
this. Yes.
So, so yes, back to your question. So, I'm not a tax attorney, so I can't
Mhm,
give any advice on tax, and this is not an advice, any
mhm,
legal advice. It's just generic information, like I said. But if you are here and you are working in whatever capacity, whatever your status is,
mhm,
ensure that you are filing your taxes. If you are receiving income in the United States, the IRS gives a number called the ITIN number. It is not a social security number, because if you can only have a social security if if you have a status in the country. But if you do not have a status in the country, and I talked about status already, if you do not have a status in the country, there's a number called the ITIN number. So if you are receiving any income from whatever means, file your taxes. File your taxes using that IT number. And I would say defer to a tax attorney. However, the second prong of your question had many parts to
mhm,
it. IRS and the USCIS communicate. Please, the USCIS communicates even with foreign countries. The
mhm.
USCIS communicates with agencies in foreign lands.
Yeah.
So the USCIS definitely communicates with agencies within the United States.
Mhm,
They do communicate. If you are, for instance, claiming a dependent that is not yours and you're filing your immigration papers, the IRS can pick that up from your
mhm,
application. It is very possible,
mhm.
because if you claim a dependent who is not on your application, you claim a child who is not on your application, because you have portions in the application you have to list your family members, and that person is not showing up. They're going to ask questions. Who
Mhm.
is this person? So it's so important to understand the importance of being as honest as much as possible. At the same time, seek legal advice. But please don't have that misconception that they don't talk.
I
The
don't.
USIS communicates with anybody who wants to communicate with.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm guessing this will be our last question. We have a question on the screen. It says, "Can I travel outside the U.S. while my green card application is pending? Please advise."
Okay. Yes, that would depend on whether you applied for the travel advance parole. So there is a form that's called the I-131. When
Mhm.
you're applying for your green card application, it's important to apply for that as well. A lot of people don't, but it's good to do that because while your green card is pending, you can go out of the country and come back because you have filed for that and it was approved. So yes, but it like I say, it depends on whether you applied for the I-130. And generally, the I-130 is free when you're applying for your green card application. There's no additional fee for that.
Okay, there is the other part. If you are an asylee and you still have your application pending, can you travel outside the US, and where can you go? Where can you not go?
So with asylum, it's a little tricky because remember that you're coming into the United States fleeing from persecution from your country. You cannot go back to your country. You cannot lay over in your country. You cannot do a stopover in your country because that defeats the purpose of the asylum. So what are you fleeing if you're going back to your country? So you can travel if even if you have an asylum pending. However, as an immigration attorney, I usually would invite you not to travel if you don't have to leave the country. If you don't have to leave the United States, I would invite you to think about not leaving the United States. I'm careful about using the word advise you not to. I'll invite you to consider these thoughts about waiting until your application is granted before, traveling, just so that you avoid issues, coming in and coming out. But like I say, always defer to your attorney, speak to an immigration attorney so that you know what works for your specific situation.
Sure. Yes. So, one more question. Please, what is your extension to book an appointment with you? Do you have like an extension when they call that particular number?
Oh, once they call this number, they'll be put right through to me. It's
Yes.
718-361-0299.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, so we are rounding up on this. It's been a very informative session, and thank you so much, Lola Dave, for going into deep details. Most of them I don't even know. I don't know the number of agencies and bodies that like we all know is USCIS. Then ICE is like a slogan, or so I kind of have a more
This is the
understanding.
popular one.
It is a popular one, especially like 2 years ago. So I kind of have better understanding of like different agencies and what they do and how like they all communicate with each other. Thank you so much. I'm sure so many people would be reaching out to you because, like I said, anyone that talks to me about immigration or even about anything that sounds like they need legal advice, I say please reach out to a lawyer. And regarding immigration, it is double reach out to a lawyer. So thank you so much for honoring our invitation and for sharing so much information with us.
You're
Um,
very welcome.
our,
Thank you
uh,
for having
our
me.
audience, okay, thank you. So our audience, I would, this is a lot of these contacts. I would invite you to please call this number if you need like legal advice or you would want her to represent you in like immigration cases, and she would be willing, and she is always available to jump in, and she is a member of Liberation Prayer Ministry, so don't worry, you will be well taken care of. Lola, do you have like a final quote for us or something?
So thank you very much, Umi. It was a pleasure and an honor as well. And I'm just glad I have the opportunity. It's tough being an immigrant. I have been an immigrant. I am an immigrant, so I do understand. I do understand exactly what people go through. But as much as possible, seek as much information as you can get. There's a lot of information on the internet. The USCIS website is full of information. It will even tell you the supporting documents they expect you to submit along your application. So please read as much as possible. ask questions, and when in doubt, please speak to an attorney.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining. We appreciate your time. Your 1 hour is very important. Thank you so much for joining, and have a beautiful rest of your weekend. See you in fellowship tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.